Hey, you know who it is. It's Zeus Cruz of Olympian Multimedia, and we are presenting you another episode of A Word with the World. And we, as you can see on the screen, guys, we are in our virtual studio today, and we have a special guest, a person that I am very grateful that I'm able to get the time to sit down and discuss. We're discussing something very important today, as we're going to get into as we go about our discussion. But she's somebody that got her hands all over the place. She's another octopus, got a lot of things going on right now. She is a licensed clinical social worker as well as a mental health therapist and the creator and proud host of the Caregiver Care Reset podcast. Guys out there, give it up for Miss Lena Suarez-Angelino. Lena, how we doing today?
Zeus, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Definitely, I'm excited too. Again, appreciate you taking some time out. I know you got a lot going on, especially with the podcast that we're going to be talking about in a little bit. Very fantastic podcast, as I might add. For you guys out there, we're going to be discussing something that it's a topic that tends to be talked about from time to time, but sometimes it gets overlooked, especially from an individual standpoint, and that's going to be mental health. We're also going to be discussing the ramifications of ignoring the warning signs when it comes to your mental health. But we're also going to be talking and touching base on understand getting an understanding when caring for a special needs person. And then, of course, guys, we're going to be talking about the podcast. So, again, let's get right into it, man. Let's not waste no time because I definitely can't wait to pick your brain a little bit, Lena, on these different things,
We're ready.
or these different topics. So, let's just start off with the mental health and discussing different aspects and components when it comes to caring for your mental health. Again, this is something that is talked about a lot in the media. It's getting a lot of coverage, especially in the last few years. But I think a lot of times, from an individual standpoint, it's something that gets overlooked. I think some people just look at it as something that they could just deal with and just move on and not realizing how detrimental that can be to their psyche, how they interact with their family, at work, in different environments. It can get scary if you leave that, like you don't give enough attention to it. So, Lena, what are signs individuals might ignore that could potentially be detrimental to their mental health?
That's a great question, and it's going to be different for everybody. So, anyone listening, it's always what applies to you. Take everything with a grain of salt and, always make sure that you speak to someone. And most importantly, change doesn't happen until awareness gets created. I'm very big on that. So, when we don't take time to pay attention to ourselves, what's happening in our nervous system, what's happening physically, mentally, in our hearts, in our minds, we ignore a lot of the little warning signs. I kind of like to call those the little speed bumps in the road, and then all of a sudden you're hitting a pothole, and then you're like, now you're paying attention. Now you're worried you've messed up your car. But the little speed bump you went over a little too fast, or you didn't catch right away. Okay, but you easily forget about it. So those are kind of those little warning signs. And so some of that might be chronic fatigue, right? Really feeling super tired, lethargic. You're no longer really interested in the things that you once enjoyed. You start to kind of pull back on taking care of yourself physically. Maybe you're not nourishing your body the way you should, or taking showers regularly, or getting outside regularly. We're at the time of filming, we're kind of coming off of winter, and we're seeing spring try and peek through. Today's fortunately a really nice day, and I can feel my energy going up a lot higher, but we were just indoors. We had a really, really cold winter here. So there's isolation there, right? A lot of that brain fog, that inability to focus. And so all of those things in isolation, all of those things by themselves, you can get through. It's the headache that will go away tomorrow. It's oh, I didn't drink enough water today, but maybe tomorrow I'll be okay. Once we start linking them all together and you go through too many speed bumps in a row, eventually you're going to damage your car. Eventually you're going to run into a pothole. And so, or something worse, right? Somebody could be crossing the speed bumps exist because we need traffic to slow down, right? We need our nervous systems to slow down. So if you ignore all of those, somebody's going to get hurt. And more than likely, it's going to be you. And that's what happens when we ignore any of those warning signs that could be just little micro signs to that lead into bigger problems that become diagnosable, right? It becomes anxiety, it becomes depression, it becomes even bipolar disorder, right? Like it could really start to evolve into all of these bigger issues and bigger concerns that now we have no choice but to address.
Really good points. And to add to it, I know, like, again, I'm not an expert on this as yourself, but just taking like myself, and I know there's a lot of people that I come in contact with, kind of got the mentality of, things are a little bit rough presently, but it's going to get better tomorrow. Then tomorrow comes, you're kind of still sitting in the same situation. Okay, well, then it's going to be better the next day after that. It's constantly like pushing it off instead of just dealing with the situation right then and there. And I feel like a lot of times too, and I'm really speaking for myself, a lot of times where it's like you wait for the catastrophe to happen before you actually do anything. Whereas the signs were there. It's kind of like when you're at work, you kind of see the signs that things are just not maneuvering and going in the right way. We need to change our mentality, change our scope, change our viewpoint, our vantage point when it comes to like how we're going to go about this project so that it could be successful, so we can move on to the next thing. And being that we're in such a society, Lena, where it's like kind of like fast paced and people want these results very quick, do you think that's kind of attributing to how people are overlooking their mental health?
Absolutely. I think for generations, we've been sold for quotes, for those just listening, we've been sold quick fixes all the time. Comes with weight loss, with focus, with, strength, with productivity, right? And now, even more so in the age of AI, in the age of, you know, reels and shorts and short form content is that's what's being consumed the most. It's quick, it's easy, but it sucks you in 2-3 hours. And so it's alerting certain parts of our brain, it's firing and triggering, and it's overstimulating. But we still continue to seek that dopamine. We continue to seek for that pleasure, for that entertainment, because it becomes almost easier to ignore anything else, right? And ignore things that take a lot more effort to address, that are a little bit more uncomfortable. And there's so much that we as a society have a really hard time reflecting on and taking a look at. And I know I'm at a point, I've been diagnosed with anxiety, I've been diagnosed with depression, with ADHD, I have and carry those symptoms. But being able to recognize and build awareness for myself in, okay, what does my body need, what is my body telling me, I've been forced to have to slow down. I'm at another point that octopus is ready to put some arms away for a little bit, and maybe build a little bit more, that are a little bit more sturdy, or have bigger hands, right? So that they can hold a little bit more, but it's a little bit more balanced, right? I'm very visual, in case people aren't picking up on that, but I'm a visual person.
Well, I'm all with the hands too.
Always, right? Always, always. I've always got a
Mm,
million things on my hands, tabs open. But, so it's I'm sensing in my nervous system, it's time to slow down again. It's time to
mhm.
focus and to pour into a few things versus a lot of things. Because I like a lot of things, but just because you like a lot of things doesn't mean you have to do all the things. And so, and Zach has taught me that,
What?
right? Zach has taught me the power of slowing down and appreciating simple joys, being more present in the moment. So I'll be forever grateful for him and for my partner. So our guy Hugh.
Awesome. Um, so Lena, building on what you were just discussing, how vital is it for someone to truly understand themselves and be transparent when evaluating their mental health? Because I always feel like personally being honest with yourself should be the easiest thing you should do in life because nobody knows you better than yourself. But you come across certain people and it seems to be like almost like pulling teeth, so to speak. Like they can't truly be honest. I know for certain things, people are not going to be totally transparent. They're going to keep things close to heart. But sometimes just keeping them things in, them emotions, those thoughts that you have, it ends up doing more damage than good over time. Because, like you said, being transparent, being totally honest about your situation, and not always putting you in the vacuum of you're the victim and everybody else is the problem, right? So, how important or how vital it is, Lena, for someone to truly understand and be transparent with themselves?
I think it's critical. I think it's going to take time and it's not always going to be pretty. You're not always going to like what you see. I picture a target, right? You're in the center of the target. And as you move further away, those are topics, you know, you keep certain topics really close knit to yourself or to one other person that you can trust, whether that be a therapist, that be a family friend, a coworker, whomever that is that you identify as that person that you kind of can be as vulnerable to and not feel judged by and feel supported by. That's who you talk to. But then there might be certain people that you're cool, but there's certain topics you know you can't really open up to them about. They just don't understand. I've noticed that. I've appreciated, and part of the reason why I know we'll get into it about the caregiver reset and just the communities that we're building, it's because I was tired of people saying that they understood when really they only understood a quarter of it or a 16th of it, or, you know, and so I don't need everyone to have walked the same walk that I have, but it's a lot easier when we have a lot more overlapping similarities of things that were. Sorry, that's you. He's my only one that blocks that comes through on call. Sorry, friends. So it's, you know, being able to move through and form circles, form communities that understand what you're going through. So a therapist is going to more than likely understand what you're going through. Then there's also, you know, if you know someone else has experienced depression, you know, hey man, I really like your content, you know, you really inspire me and you've mentioned that you've experienced some mental health. And you tell me, where do I start? What's one small thing that you think could help me? You know, I oftentimes in therapy will be like, okay, I know it's therapy 101, but let's take a deep breath. We jump from thing to thing to thing to thing without ever pausing to take a breath. We're breathing, right? But we're not actually being intentional about the breath that we are taking. And it starts there. I know it sounds so simple, but if we get in the habit of slowing down enough to be present on a breath, chances are that your nervous system is going to start to breathe.
Really good point. So, to further elaborate on that, for someone to kind of catch their breath, so to speak, could you share with the viewers a few techniques that they could utilize or exercise on their part so that their mental health can be in good standing?
The first one will definitely be a breath. You can do a breath in a few different ways, and so you can kind of outline. You can either outline a star, outline your hand because it's right in front of you, or, you know, touching each of your fingers, but you kind of inhale and exhale, inhale, exhale, and you want to hold it for a few seconds. So what that would kind of look like is you inhale through your nose. You hold it for about 2, 3, 4 seconds, however long you can. And then you just exhale with your mouth. And you just allow that to settle, allow that to feel. You know, you want to kind of note on your next breath that you take, maybe you want to start to notice, where is the breath getting stuck in my body? I hold a lot of tension in my shoulders and in my neck. So that's oftentimes where my breath gets stuck. But for somebody who's maybe a little bit nervous or they're anxious about something, it might get stuck in their stomach, right? And in their bellies. And so you just want to kind of then be intentional about, okay, on my next breath, I'm going to try and see if I can move that a little bit. Maybe I tighten it. There, it's called a progressive muscle relaxation, and you could break the body down toe by toe, foot by foot, you know, leg by leg, but you kind of inhale and you tense up and you hold and then you release. And so if I need a quick fix, I just do a lot of the times my shoulders and my neck, and then I release. So you can kind of modify, you can expand it for the amount of time and how much effort you're willing to put in. Because it takes effort, right? If you were to do 5 minutes, you might not have 5 minutes. You might have 30 seconds in between your next phone call. So it's finding those two ways.
Okay, that's nice. Something as simple as just different like breathing techniques. It's like it astonishes me because I know between my job and do my day job and my business, I'm overwhelmed with stress. So sometimes just having that moment of just letting out that deep breath. I'm probably doing a lot of like cursing inside my head. You know what I mean? Just snapping within myself, like I can't stand people. I wish I wasn't in this situation. But it's just amazing how something as simple as just having that deep breath or just taking that moment. Like, yes, you got a lot going on, but just take that brief moment to yourself just to get yourself together, collect your thoughts so that you can kind of give yourself a little bit of clarity as you
Mm-hmm.
move forward, right? I do want to
One
pick
final
your
note on
Oh, go
that
ahead, go
too.
ahead.
I like to think of that as you want to kind of bookend your activities. So at the start of an activity, at the end of an activity, you drive to your next destination, you bookend that again, you take another deep breath in, another deep breath out, at the end, you drive to your next workshop, your next meeting, record your next episode, right? Like before you jump to the next arm of your octopus life,
Yeah.
we want to
Mhm.
kind of take a breath because it gives your body and your nervous system a chance to say, hey, yeah, we didn't drink water all day and it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Like we're a little thirsty
Mhm.
here, you know? And because if we just jump, we're ignoring those signals. We might be running to the bathroom, but you might think back and be like, wow, yeah, I haven't even really used the bathroom a lot today. Why? Because I haven't stopped to drink enough water. So taking that moment to kind of bookend your activities with your breath can be helpful as well. It's the nice little reminder as you transition into the next thing.
Very good point. I hope your viewers out there are taking this in. I do want to pick your brain a little bit too about this, about when it comes to like self-help books and utilizing AI. I know a lot of people tend to go straight to Chat GPT to answer all their life problems or whatever issues that they're going through. AI seems to be a huge wave, especially in the last like 2 or 3 years. What are your thoughts about that as a person who kind of like use these mediums to try to better their mental health? Is good? Is it danger? Can it be dangerous to utilize these type of mediums?
I think there's pros and cons just with everything, right? It's really dependent on the user and how the user is using it. I think even I wasn't fully around or as popular when I was pregnant, but I would like Google pregnancy symptoms, right? And so if I saw that there was a forum online and, a social media discussion about it, I'd be like, okay, I'm not alone in experiencing this. Let me see what other people experience. And so I know that that's a different response because AI is whereas you're kind of collecting from a pool of people from real life experiences. AI is just becomes that two-way sort of that two-way street of like it's almost that echo chamber of what you've given it, what you have told it, and what other users have eventually told it, to compile and respond to you, but in a way that is kind of always programmed to validate you. And so if you're really highlighting and but in a way, as a therapist, we don't always know if a client is telling their truth or not. Over time and with rapport, we might be able to highlight certain discrepancies and storylines that don't always line up. But someone isn't going to most likely tell their AI, like, hey, can you call me out on these behaviors? If I'm telling you one thing, it's easier to not even take that mirror out. And so I think there's pieces of it, but as someone who overthinks a lot, and I don't know how to break down tasks. I know that sounds so silly, but like if, the task is start a podcast, I don't see it in my brain as okay, I got to figure out equipment. I got to know what I'm going to name it. I'm going to know, I'm going to I don't break it down in that way. So AI can be helpful in like, I have all these things that I want to do today, or I really want to start a podcast. What are the things that I can do? And it can be helpful to kind of take away some of that overwhelm of then knowing what that next step would be. And then as a bias, I have an anger management workbook for moms. So I think self-help books are great. But again, I think it's really just like as you're listening to this podcast, you might not love every single thing I say. I hope you don't love every single thing I say. And I hope that, you know, you question certain things, or you take your own spin on it. You know, maybe it's you're not driving, but you're swimming, you know, like whatever. In my analogy with the speed bumps, I don't know. Like, you know, it's those different pieces that you make it make sense for you, but also knowing, you know, when do you need that outside support? When do you need that outside help? There's a lot of myths that still hold people back culturally and generationally of what people believe therapy to be, and what, you know, therapy is supposed to look like, and XYZ things. And, you know, as a therapist, I personally cannot prescribe medication, but there might be some other therapists that have additional training and additional licensure that can prescribe medication. But just because you're in therapy doesn't mean that you're going to have to start taking medication. I will say the reverse though. If you're already taking if you're taking medication, I do encourage therapy, you know, from time to time, because it still isn't a magic pill. There's still so much work to be done and conversations to be held in addition to the medication.
Yeah. But I think you would agree, Lena, that especially when it comes, we're discussing something, a sensitive topic to some people when it comes to mental health, that if you're really serious about improving it and putting yourself in a better headspace, so to speak, that it starts with you. You have to be honest enough to see the changes that you have to make to improve your mental health. It's easy for somebody outside looking in, especially somebody who's very close to you, your loved ones, maybe a close friend, relative, where they can see you can make certain changes, you could better certain things in your life, you could better the way your perspective is towards certain things. But unless you see it for yourself first, getting the help needed so that you can progress further, it's pretty much going to be redundant, right? A lot of times people tend to, touching base on what you said earlier, they might acknowledge that they have a problem or that their mental health is declining. But then again, subconsciously, they'll just keep pushing it off because they desensitize their mind to believe it's not that big of a deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know I'm guilty of it a lot of times as well. Like, I'll burn my shoulders with so much, and then I pretty much collapse, you know? And then I'm sitting here pretty much asking a dumb question like, why am I feeling the way I am right now? Why can't I function properly? And it's
How
like,
did we
duh,
get
Zeus,
here?
you put too much. Yeah, you put too much on yourself. I mean, duh. I mean, even a blind man could have seen that. So it's just like sometimes that fog you were talking about, that mental fog, and you end up becoming naive to certain things. You know, that's a dangerous thing. Guys, we definitely recommend, and we're definitely putting that out there for those who are dealing with different things when it comes to their mental health, that if the signs are there, please acknowledge it. But also, too, see it within yourself that you want to get the help, that you want to improve your mental health.
Mm-hmm.
So, Lena, you made some really good points. Again, for your viewers out there, I hope you got like a pen and pad. You're jotting this stuff down. Lena's definitely dropping some gems here. So, Lena, let's move on. We touched base talking about this certain guy right here. Shout out to Hugh O. Smith. You
Love you,
guys know who
babe.
he is. The name sounds familiar. He's been on the show a few times. Very successful author. But you and your husband Hugh care for your special needs son. Again, another shout out to Zach. You made mention of him a little earlier. Please explain to the viewers the challenges of caring for him and what should individuals keep in mind if they're in a similar situation.
If anyone is in a situation like ours, they'll understand 100% what I'm about to say. The challenges aren't necessarily with raising Zachary. but it's the lack of systems in place. It's the lack of support from these systems that make it a challenge. And those challenges being Zachary today is about 100 pounds. He's 7 years old, about 100 pounds, and he's not really walking or talking yet. He's uses a wheelchair and is completely dependent on us for any activities of daily living. You picture an infant who you have to change their diapers and get them dressed and feed them and, you know, drive them to and from all their places. Obviously, a 7-year-old still isn't driving. But beyond that, you know, he's not putting his shoes on. He's not. And so we have that at 100 pounds. And so being able to see, we're crying out for help, but certain systems for the longest time, and even now we're finally able to get some of the state assistance with Medicaid from him, but prior to that he wasn't disabled enough. He wasn't at 100 pounds, not walking, not talking, fully dependent. We still didn't qualify because there was a higher criteria of need. And you know, but this is our 24/7. And so there's certain pieces that, you know, you feel like you're drowning and you feel overwhelmed, but and you're faced with the choice. You can choose to only focus on what the challenges are and how you're not getting help and how, you know, your what your rights should be and are and blah blah blah, or you could take that moment and appreciate the things that we do have, the supports that we do have. Hugh is a phenomenal partner, and you know, I don't think I'd be. He always says, "Yes, you would," but I don't think I would be able to do this on my own. And so, you know, I'm so blessed to have him as such a stable support in our lives, and you know, really being able. I was mentioning earlier, right? Seeing those little joys. Zach is happy. He barely could care less that he even has a dirty diaper. Just keep his belly full, keep him, you know, have a drink, and his show, he's good. He doesn't need anything else in the world. He could stay in the same clothes for 7 days. He doesn't, but you know, he's content. He has such a happy demeanor, and we're so grateful for that. But it's also very easy if you're in walking this path, or if you know someone who's walking this path of being a caregiver, especially to a child with disabilities, to a child with special needs. It's very 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 easy to isolate, because chances are you're struggling to ask for help. You're struggling to, you know when to reach out. Your mental health is on the back burner, your physical health is on the back burner, because now you're taking care of this person, you know, and meeting all of their needs really before your own at all times. And that's again where we see burnout, where we see all the exacerbate the all the symptoms get bigger, right? And so yeah, you're not alone in going through this. Community is more important now than ever. I firmly believe that. And so that's some of the biggest pieces that I want people to know about our journey. Trust your gut. I think that's the last one I'll say about that is really trust your instincts. Get second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth opinions if you need to, not because you're not liking what you hear. We have waited on wait lists, and we have driven to hours worth of doctor's appointments and paid who knows how many copays for all of them to still shrug their shoulders and say, keep doing what you're doing. So the opinions aren't really giving us much much of anything to go off of either. So they're just as lost as we are. So it's important that you feel heard, that you feel supported, and you know that you truly are in circles and in communities that truly understand what you're going through.
Great point. And I know with Zach, I met him at the Woodbridge book event, and just seeing the different posts that you and Hugh put on social media, there has never been a time when I did not see Zach not smiling. He seems very joyous, very in tune with what's going on. Just a really bright spirit, caring spirit that's radiating off of him. And I know that in itself has to be a blessing, to know that despite his situation, his limitations, it's all inspiring to see somebody still be happy, still enjoying life. And to me, even with him being with the special needs, he doesn't seem limited. Just has a great community, great people around him, great parents. I know you guys are starting to get more involved with the community, setting up different things regarding with other families who are dealing with special needs children or relatives. Can you touch base on that?
Yeah, we run a Facebook group called Central Jersey Special Needs Community. So that's really intended to be for it's expanded to a lot most of Jersey, but anything that I'm going to kind of host will be more in the Central Jersey location just because I'm tired of driving. That's another thing where we drive far for a lot of his activities. This kid does football and it's only 2 months, and it's like the longest, greatest and fastest and longest 2 months at a time because September and October we're driving 45 minutes for an hour practice, so it's a 3-hour ordeal twice a week for practice, and then on a Sunday
I
for
know
the
he does the
game.
riding, right?
Yep, he goes therapeutic horseback riding. So we drive an hour for a half-hour ride, so that's another 4-hour window of time but we do it because we see him light up and we've seen progress be made and we've seen where we're building those communities around him, where so God forbid something happens to us, or now when we're reaching out and saying, hey, Zach needs XYZ, people know him, people know who he is, people are wanting to support, and it allows us to excuse me, it allows us to be able to feel a little, to be part of that community, to be included. Oftentimes, we're the first person in a wheelchair to show up to something. We went to a prom one time and, we were one of the first attendees in a wheelchair, and they've been having the prom for years. We're not afraid to be out in our community. And I think that that's really inspiring people. We had a joint birthday party. One of the guests said in 12 years, she's never been invited to a birthday party. Come on, that's childhood, right? And so being able to build and create those opportunities, run a peer support group in Avenel, which is also local to us, and it allows for parents to come together, and there's childcare and lunch provided, and so it's really a time where parents and caregivers get to connect and focus on themselves a little bit, take away some resources that they may need, some accountability of, hey, I got to get this paperwork done and I'm overwhelmed by it. Who's done this paperwork before? Because the last thing you want to do is wait all this time for you to find out you did the paperwork wrong and then you're getting denied and have to restart the process. It's traumatizing. And so I know for myself that that's one of the things that I get overwhelmed with. And so pulling on people's strengths and using them as part of that village. So from the Facebook group, from in-person supports and workshops that I host, and then now with our podcast, we're just hoping to kind of cover all the basis of, support and care for families. I truly see myself, you'll see me doing trainings for our Department of Children and Families and for the Children's System of Care to say, hey, we got to support our caregivers better, and this is how we do it.
Well, definitely, it's very encouraging, and it's great to hear how you're involved in the community. You're basically creating like this extended family for Zach. So again, shout out to Zach. Much blessings to him, to you, to Hugh. I know nothing but great things are going to come towards you,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to him. And I love the energy in his spirit, and uh, and it's all good things.
Yeah. All great
I think
things.
a lot of times, yeah, with all the negativity and the things that all the chaos that we constantly hear about, it's nice to have these like feel good stories. Just looking at somebody like Zach, it just briefly looks at like I could look at myself, and it's like, man, it's just so much chaos, so much things are going on, and I could easily just stay in this negative stupor. Whereas this young guy right here is just happy, enjoying life to the T. You know what I mean? And just dealing with what he has to deal with on an everyday basis. It kind of looks at the rest of us like, yeah, you can do better, man. It ain't as bad as what you think it is. So definitely shout out to you guys. I love the fact of what you're doing with the community, and much blessings to all of you when it comes to that.
Thank you. One of the episodes we
So
covered on the podcast, we're getting a park built right next door to us. We share the property line with it. And I made sure, I said, make sure, I think you
wow.
promised our mayor and said, promise me Zach can play on this playground. And so we have an episode
Wow.
with the mayor talking all about it. And it's just so cool because it's that ripple effect. It's not just for Zach, it's for every community before us and for every individual behind us. Right? And so really creating that history of being able to just continue to further impact and further support. We come with a lot of needs. Right? We need full-size changing tables. We need a wheelchair access. We need enough space for his eye gaze to communicate and be heard. But it's beautiful. And it's showing people this is what inclusion looks like.
Well, also too, I'm just going to put it extended, another octopus hand out here. I'm gonna extend it out to you. You know, myself and Olympian Multimedia is definitely here to support you guys in any way possible. Is there any way we can help?
Yeah.
We're definitely going to be there. You guys are great.
Received. Thank you.
So Lena, let's talk about how you're the proud host of the Caregiver Reset podcast. Again, I have to mention it's just a great podcast, very insightful, very meaningful. We discussed it before we started filming about you have such this nurturing ambience about you, discussing different things and just being as insightful that you are. So I know you just did an episode discussing about why you started doing the Caregiver podcast. But I hope it ain't too much for you to kind of reiterate that on this episode. So, Lena, how did you develop the concept and what was your motivation
I
behind doing
mean,
the college or starting the podcast?
if you haven't guessed it already, Zach was certainly the motivation behind starting the Caregiver
Definitely.
Reset. And I was getting tired. I was getting tired and overwhelmed and frustrated that people were saying that they were understanding and they weren't. And I knew back in, so I've been in the field a little over 10 years now, where navigating and working for multiple systems, so I was a social worker, a clinical mental health therapist before I had Zachary. Then I had Zachary and now have seen, the first 5 years of his life, I was going in understanding, I know we're overworked, underwhelmed, and underpaid, like I know the systems that are being navigated from the professional standpoint. But what I didn't understand is why no one was still providing the services and the support the way that I needed as a parent. Because I know as a clinician, I would be able to, I was providing that support for families. So now it's my turn to receive that kind of care and that kind of attention, and it's nowhere to be found. And so I was frustrated, and I was already, I've experienced burnout a handful of times, and I knew that this was going to be another area where if I didn't take care of myself, if I didn't make sure that I found my support systems, if I didn't find my community, I would burn out and much worse. And so the Caregiver Reset kind of blends all of my professional experience, the mental health background that I have, and my lived experiences being a caregiver, navigating the systems from both sides, to really break it down in ways that, at the end of every episode, we try and do and give you a reset. So similar to what we did earlier about breathing, we'll do an exercise together. You'll be able to walk away with just another little tool in your toolbox that you can listen to over and over and over again when you need to just reset, when you just need that minute, because we don't have hours. And so we need those quick bites. And so being able to just speak to, it's refreshing. I've updated my therapy information to really say, hey, I help caregivers. And so many people have reached out for the same exact reasons. I wanted to go to somebody who understood the life that I'm living, because traditional, and nothing wrong with a traditional parent therapist and, dealing that navigates parent struggles and this, that, and third. Those all exist. They exist in our world too. They just look different. And so it's figuring out, who did you not have to over explain everything to? Sometimes people seek me out because I'm Latina and because they know that I speak Spanish and they know that I can understand some of the cultural differences and upbringing of growing up in a Latino community. And so being able to people already have a distrust for systems. And so when you go to people that look like you and have lived life parallel to you, your nervous system starts to open up that trust a little bit faster, because you're not questioning, do they really understand, or are they judging me? And so I just hope that with the podcast itself and the programs that we create from that people understand that this is coming from a place of care and love and experience, and that it's something that resonates with them. Is it going to be every single piece of it? No. But, again, that birthday party, I think there was 2 kids that weren't in a wheelchair. How many times have you gone to a birthday party and maybe there's one child? And so it's, we've become the majority in our circle of, what our care looks like and what our life looks like. But the caregiver, if you're a caregiver too, we're in that sandwich generation where our parents are getting older, and then we're looking behind us and we're looking at our children and our family unit, our partner, our household. And so we're split in between. Forget about work, where there's that third arm that we didn't have capacity to give up. But now we've got work, we've got our own mental health, there's another arm, and our own needs. And then anything, forget social life, forget hobbies, what are those? So
Mhm.
it's those reminders. It's those reminders to put you first again and again and again without feeling guilty. And I've always been drawn to that concept. I just didn't know who I was speaking to. So it always felt messy. It always felt, it's relevant, it's helpful, but now I'm like, oh no, I got you. My caregivers, I
Mhm.
know. And so it's just been such a beautiful, the feedback has been great. And, people really relate. And whether you're not a caregiver, just the tools, even with my anger management workbook, like it says for moms, really the case studies are about moms, but anyone can use the tools. Like I, I just wasn't going to turn down a book deal. So,
Mhm.
how that goes. And but it's been
Mhm.
such a beautiful journey, and I hope that summarizes it and gets our listeners to, click on. If you like me rambling, I ramble on there sometimes. So, and then other times I'm a little bit more concise, but it's a mix. It's a mix of interviews, it's a mix of solo episodes, just really whatever people want to hear, we try and produce.
Awesome. And I definitely, for you viewers out there, of course, I'm gonna recommend it. I'm not recommending it because Lena's on the show. Stop it. You know what I mean? It has nothing to do with that. It really is a great show. What I love about it the most is the fact that it doesn't feel very preachy or overly technical the way you're explaining certain things. You hit the nail on the coffin. It's very relatable. It really feels like you're talking to me personally, like we're just having this one-on-one conversation. That's where that nurturing part comes out of, because of course you have so much expertise and background in this field. So it's easy sometimes. I know I do it a lot myself, where I start being a little too analytical when I start explaining certain things. And then you could just see it right on the person's face. It went right over their head. And then I'm annoyed or irritated because now I got to explain it again, but I have to explain it in a different way. So, but that's more my fault, guys. I know how I am sometimes. I go a little bit too extreme in that regard. But with your show, it's just like I said, it just feels very nurturing, very inviting, and the information is easy to comprehend. And I think that's what's important a lot of times, especially for something like this, when you're discussing about mental health, about caregiving, like to explain it in a way where, like, not only is it easy to comprehend, but people feel comfortable about it. Because again, especially with mental health, like we discussed, it's such a sensitive topic. People tend not to, they kind of go around it. And like you said earlier, kind of just touch base with it, but really don't want to dive all the way into it. So I love the fact that you created this platform where it's like it's just easy to talk about it, and it's in a very calm, cool, collective type of atmosphere that you have created. So Lena, much success to you when it comes to the podcast. Definitely recommend it for your viewers out there. Definitely check it out. We'll come back to it in just a little bit. Let people know where they can watch it. But now I want to pick your brain again. Lena. And I'm good for doing that, picking people brains. You know what I mean?
That's what we're here for.
There's an expression that you have used that I would like for you to explain to the viewers. And that expression is invisible grief. So could you give some enlightenment on that?
Invisible grief is, well, let's take a moment to kind of define grief loosely, right? It's the loss of something or someone, whether that's loss of job, loss of a person, the result of death. That's how I define grief in a very brief nutshell, is the loss of something. You could listen. I thought my water bottle is covered in stickers, and I thought I misplaced it for a little bit, and I was like, oh no, my water bottle, right? We all have that support water bottle, maybe you try and part ways, but you always find yourself back to one. And so there's a grief there, right? There's a loss there. And then it has a variety of stages of grief, and there's some controversy around that too. That'll be for a whole other episode. But that invisible grief is often what I've noticed and what I've experienced as a caregiver is my motherhood looks very different. There was really no indication throughout pregnancy that our life would look any different than what it looked, or that it would have looked the way it looks now. And even when he was first born, milestones were being met, and things were kind of progressing as quote unquote expected. And so there had to come a point where I had to grieve the motherhood and the childhood that I was envisioning from our family. There's that, and it happens time and time and time again. It's the grief of going to a there's a park that got built or is getting renovated nearby, and everyone's posting. They're so excited about this slide that got reestablished or whatever, let alone even being able to get him up the slide. I would have either figured it out, or depending on the height, but we're not even going to attempt to go there right now because all I see is mulch. It's still in 2026, it's still being built mulch. It's not even welcoming to us in a wheelchair. And so there's a grief of, wow, they sunk all this money, all this investment into this, and still haven't made it accessible. There's that grief when, you think about, will I become a grandmother one day? Maybe, maybe not. Will my child ever be able to drive? Will my child ever be able to walk? Will my child ever, he's starting to use an eye gaze for communication. That's a very unnatural, it's not unnatural, it's an unfamiliar. There's a lot of unfamiliarity. And so there's a grief that kind of goes hand in hand with that, because you ground yourself and you find compassion in, okay, this is a new experience for him and it's a new experience for us, but this is our experience. But if we only choose to say, nope, it's okay, this is what it is, this is okay, that invisible grief starts to build more and more and more. You sweep it under the rug, and eventually it's going to become a mound. It's going to become that speed bump we can no longer ignore. It's going to become, crater through into a pothole, and then you're going to be like, oh my God, and everything's going to catch up to you. I have so many people that reach out. They fight years and years and years for a diagnosis. They finally get the diagnosis, and it's like floodgates open up. They're prepared to hear it. They fought so hard to hear it. That was our experience too. But it's like, it's true. It's someone finally heard me. And you grieve all the time that's gotten lost, all the energy and the fights that you've had to put through just to be heard by that seventh provider, by that, we're exhausted. And so there's a grief there too. There's so many layers that people don't always see, or people think that they're being supportive and they'll say, oh, well, they'll grow out of it, or they'll this, they'll that. And especially for my families that have lower support needs for their diagnosis, for their disabilities, and they can quote unquote get by pretty well, but maybe they see them at their highest masking point, at their highest ability of, keeping it all together, but then they go in their car and have a meltdown, or they get home and now, and they can't regulate themselves. Ooh, throwing thumbs up over here. I talk with my hands in my people don't always see that. So then we grieve that people we thought understood our story don't understand our story. And so you're just reminded your milestones, graduations, picture days, sometimes happen, but it's just everything that you see on a typical, trajectory. We don't, our experiences just look different, and it takes an extra second to, plan to go somewhere. It takes an extra second to scope things out. But I think that that's why I'm so adamant about showing the community what it truly looks like to be inclusive, and, encouraging that, because they're not purposely trying to exclude us. It's just not in their face every day. So they don't realize and recognize, going to the pool. I would love every pool to have a beach wheelchair, a wet wheelchair, because I put him in his wet bathing suit, take him out, put him back in with his dry clothes, and guess what? The seat's all wet. But no, I got to put pads down and this and that, and you just scurry your child into the locker room and change them without even giving it a second thought. And you're frustrated by them because they're probably getting distracted and singing a song and hanging off the wall and dancing with the shower head, and you're like, would you just sit still? So it's, and but there's challenges there's going to be challenges everywhere, but there's that grief that I think, and that fear. We don't know who's going to take care of our children when we're no longer here, and making sure we do everything in our power to set it up before then. And a lot of people don't always have to think that way. It can happen to anybody, but a lot of people don't think about it in that way.
Really good point, and I appreciate you sharing that. To a very small degree, I could resonate with what you're saying. Shout out to the Mrs. Lisa. When I got with her, she has 3 kids. I have one on my own, but she has 3 kids, and her oldest is autistic. And I've never been around a person who was autistic. So early on in the relationship, I'm just trying to start creating this bond with her children. It was, I'm not gonna lie, it was a little bit hard. It was definitely difficult, and it speaks to like that grief or that fear that you're talking about, because you definitely care. I definitely care for Lisa tremendously. I love her to death, and then I love the kids. But for me, the dynamics, the different mannerism, the way he looks at the world, and how he acts and interacts, it it was difficult dealing with her oldest because I just was never in that environment or dealing with somebody like that. So I'm faulting him for saying and doing certain things when it was really beyond his peripheral, beyond his realm. He can't help himself. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean he means any ill will towards you, but I was taking it too personal.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the fear of getting to the point where it's like, am I going to be able to stay within this relationship? Because it's tough. And I don't want to put Lisa in a compromising situation where it's like it's me versus the kids, because automatically you're going to pick the kids, and I didn't want to mess up a really good relationship or distance myself from him simply because of who he is, because that's who he is, and I have to accept that. So I could definitely understand to a certain extent what that means. Whereas, like, especially when it comes to kids, I'm a worrier. I'm a huge worrier. I'm always worrying about, are we gonna have enough of this? What's gonna go on at the end of the week? Are we gonna be okay? Dumb thoughts do come up. You tend to not to have them come up as far as like if something happens to me or Lisa or the kids are going to be taken care of. Mind you, the kids are older now. You know what I mean? But it doesn't matter what age they come to be. You're all, as a parent, you're just a natural worrier. You just want to make sure they're good more so than yourself,
Mm-hmm.
because it's all about them. Everything I do in life is for my fam. And I know you and Hugh is the same way. Everything you guys do is for Zach. So that's something I could definitely resonate with you guys. And you guys are great parents. The focal point has always been about Zach. Everything you do, even involving with engaging community involved, like we're talking about, it all stems from Zach.
Mhm.
This is our motivation. This is what uh gives us that fortitude to be like, look, man, it's tough, but man, we got this smiling face on Zach that
Mhm.
could pull us through. And it just gives you that reminder, probably like, life is not that bad.
He's
You
your
know,
biggest cheerleader,
it's tough.
guaranteed.
Yeah, it's tough, but we can deal with it. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
It takes a lot of humility and a lot of being able to kind of push your own ego aside to see and recognize, okay, that's something that maybe he can't control. And listen, they can fool you too. Some of our kids, they know who and what they can get away with on certain things, but there's also a big part of it that they can't control. And so being able to see that and see, okay, well, he's still important to me, and the relationship is still important, the relationship with his siblings are still important. What can I do differently? How can I change my approach to how I'm engaging him, how I'm understanding him? And over time, hopefully it does work out, and it sounds like it's worked out, so it which is a beautiful thing. And so, but that took you getting out of your own way and dealing with your grief of, sure, it doesn't look like the relationship you expected, but appreciating the relationship for what it is.
Yeah. I That's a nail on the coffin for me. It's so easy to keep your mind focused on the negative, and not even appreciate the little blessings. I
Mm-hmm.
know that's something that Lisa tells me all the time, you know, not to like go too much off topic, but just taking it from a personal standpoint. Like, I'm working at Olympian, I'm trying to get it to the next step, that next level. It seems like I'm making some traction, and then something comes where it just brings me right back down, and I'm trying to work my way up back again. And it's just like, you get them frustration, you start being a little bit depressed. Like, what else can I possibly do to gain the momentum, build on the momentum, gain this traction, and get this business to the next level? And Lisa's always reminding me, like, look, I understand you're not where you want to be at, but why don't you take some time just for a moment and appreciate just the little blessings that you got, that you actually have clients, that you're actually through your business was able to publish all these books, that you have all these different types of media that's out there for people to enjoy. You know what I mean? Like nobody can rob you of these accomplishments. You know what I mean? Again, to the next person, they may not even care, think of it as a big deal, but you accomplished it. You did that on your own. Even through all the hard times, you still saw it within yourself to stay focused enough to be like, hey, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to give it my all. So she's always telling me, babe, just hush your mouth, settle down, right? Take that deep breath that you were talking about, Lena, and just appreciate you do have some blessings. It may not be the ones you're looking for, but they're there. So just take the time to smell the roses, appreciate the sunshine, and appreciate these little blessings. And at some point in time, you're going to transition to big blessings. You know what I mean? So that's something
You
that I definitely keep in mind. And I'm appreciative of her that she kind of puts that foot in my butt a little bit. You know what I mean? And kind of keeps me grounded in that kind of way. I know you has said that a couple times as well, how you done that to him. We
Oh, and
need that.
I'm ready to say he has done it to me. Listen, don't say, like, I'm not on a pedestal. I am walking right alongside every single person because we all need those reminders. We all need those reminders to say,
Mhm.
look how far we've come. To like you said, stop and smell the roses. He says you're stressed out about or unhappy about the exact thing you were praying for a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and it hits
Yeah.
you deep. It hits. So listen, we all keep each
Yeah.
other in check, but that's part of that support. That's part of that community.
And don't and it's not just you, Lena, because Hugh's checked me a couple times as well. You know what I mean? So definitely shout out to Hugh. Uh Probably one of the most insightful people I ever came across. He just
Yeah.
seems to know what to say at the right time. It might be a little bit crude, a little bit, like a little tinge, but at the end of the day, when you think about it, man, it's just because he cares. He cares enough to give you that reality check, so to speak.
We always joke and
So
say if
Lena,
he ever opened a practice,
oh,
it would be called Real Talk Therapy, you know, and he would just give you the real, you know, and that's it. Like,
yeah. I mean, honestly, you need that. Sometimes people tend to kind of like. I know some people are sensitive, and it's all about being respectful. But sometimes you just have to give it as is. Just the black and white. There's no gray area. Just give it as it is. If you take it, okay. If not, well, I don't know what to tell you. But you really needed to hear this. And I think that's the type of person that I am. I always kind of treat people with this kind of mentality. And I don't mean for it to sound rough or whatever, but I'd rather be stabbed in the front and the back than in the back because at least I'll see it coming. And that's how I treat people. I'd rather just tell you the truth beforehand instead of you just finding out stuff later. Or I'm just coming at you from a subliminal standpoint. It's better for me to just put everything out in the open and then you take it as is. I'm not meaning to hurt your feelings or to tear you down. If I didn't approach you in this way and I stood silent, that means I don't care. But the fact that I'm taking time to put this foot up your butt, it means I care. So you might want to just settle down, just listen to what I got to say. You know what I mean? Because believe it or not, at that particular moment in time, you need to hear that. So it's just great to have them type of people around who are not afraid to let it be known, like, hey, you need to tighten up a little bit. You're
mhm,
doing a little bit too much. Settle down a little bit. Get yourself together. If you need some help with this, that, and the third, I'm here for you. You know what I mean?
absolutely.
So you definitely have a great partner when it comes to Hugh. Again, shout out to Hugh. You the
Shout
man
out to
here.
the missus.
And shout out to you too, Lena. You know what I mean? We tend to forget about the ladies. You know what I mean? Let's not do that. Shout out to you too, Lena. You know what I mean?
No, we get
So,
it
Lena,
up.
just to end this great, great conversation that we had in the discussion, because you done provided so many gems that, again, I hope the viewers really tuned in on and really took it in. Is what's new on the horizon for Lena?
Continue to support our YouTube channel. Continue the Caregiver Reset. We would love to, reach our larger audience. We're growing our email list now, and we're hoping to have
So
a
they can
couple
watch the show on YouTube.
on YouTube. Yep. We're looking
Okay.
to get onto other platforms too right now, but YouTube is our focus. We're on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok as well for the shorts, for the short form content that will keep you addicted, that we talked about earlier. But our full segment, our full episodes are live on YouTube. So please make sure to check it out. Spread the word. If you think someone can, listen and have a takeaway with something, please share it. That will help us the most right now.
And the episodes usually come on Tuesdays.
Tuesdays. Yep, Tuesdays about 7:30 at night Eastern time.
Awesome. So you guys out there, come on now. It's a no-brainer. Look out on Tuesdays at 7:30. Go to YouTube. You're not doing nothing anyway. So do something productive. This is something productive. Check out Lena's show. It's called the Caregiver Reset Podcast. You're not going to be disappointed. And also, too, please don't forget, don't just watch the show. You need to do two other things. You need the number one, subscribe. Click the subscribe button. It's free. It's very easy to do. You just move the mouse and just hit that
Move
button
your little
there real quick.
finger.
And then there's a button. Yeah. And then there's a button right next to the subscribe, and it's called share. So how about you subscribe first and go ahead and share? Again, you're not going to be disappointed. Lena is terrific. So much information, just a plethora of information, very insightful. Again, nurturing. It's almost as if she's just speaking to you personally. You're definitely not going to be disappointed.
Thank you.
Lena, again, I can't thank you enough for taking the time out because I know you're busy. You're doing a whole lot of different things. But I appreciate you taking the time out to come and to discuss about the mental health, discuss and getting allowing the viewers to get this understanding when it comes to being a caregiver, especially in the confines of caring for a special needs person, someone with disabilities. Again, for you guys out there, I hope it was very insightful, very encouraging. Just know you're not alone. Lena, do you have any way for people to reach out to you if they have any kind of questions or concerns?
They can message me on Instagram at the Caregiver Reset. They can also follow TikTok. I'm on Threads, Instagram, Facebook. So all at the Caregiver Reset. So I'll be there and check it out, and and reach out, comment on YouTube. I'll comment back. So
Awesome. And definitely check it out. All the links will be provided in the comment below when it comes to this video. Again, Lena, thank you so much. You provided so much great information. Much blessings to you, to your family, to all the success when it comes to the podcast, everything you're doing in the community. You definitely have a fan down here in South Jersey, down here in Little Old Millville with Zeus and the extended Olympian multimedia family. Any help that you need or assistance, don't be afraid to ask. We'll definitely be right there to help. You and Hugh are great. Again, shout out to your son Zach. And I think I covered all the bases, right?
I think you
I
did.
did.
My last piece is just thank you,
All right.
everybody. Thank
So
you,
again,
Zeus. Thank you, Olympia Media. Thank you for all of our listeners, for sticking around and hearing it out. So really great stuff. And I want to hear what you learned.
awesome. Yeah, definitely send some comments in. Let us know what you think. We're always looking to not only better our craft, but just get some insight from you guys. Include some stories as well. Maybe you have some personal experiences you want to share. But definitely reach out to Lena if you're dealing with trying to improve your mental health. If you are in the situation where you're a caregiver to a special needs person, definitely reach out and use her as a reference point, as it were. Just to know that you're not alone. There are people that are dealing with what you're dealing with, and you can use Lena and the Caregiver Reset podcast as your resource. So again, you know who it is. It's Zeus Cruz of Olympian Multimedia. Da 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 da. You know who it is, and I appreciate you guys tuning in to another episode of A Word with the World with Miss Lena SUAREZ-ANGELINO. And much blessing to all you guys out there. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will check you next time. Bye bye.